Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to walk you through how to install Trex composite decking. In case you missed it, I made an entire video on designing your floating deck and the things to consider before you break ground. I cover how to determine the size of your deck, direction of decking and framing, how to determine deck height, and the layout of your deck. I also have a tutorial on how to frame a floating deck. I will link both of those videos in the description below. I combined the entire deck build into a PDF download. I go over all the tools, materials, and cost breakdown of the deck. You can find the link to that in the description below as well. Let's take a look at the materials we plan to use for the project. This is composite decking from Trex. They have 3 different tiers of decking products. We chose the color Coastal Bluff, which is part of their Trex Enhanced line in the lowest tier. We're doing a picture frame border around the entire deck, so for that we will use the square edge boards. These boards are about 1 inch thick, 5.5 inches wide, and 16 feet long. For all the inside deck boards, we will use these grooved boards. These boards are the same dimension as the square edge boards. We used 2x8s for our deck framing, so we went with the 7.25 inch fascia board, which is a thinner material, about 1/2 inch thick, and that will go all along the bottom of the deck. For the border pieces and the fascia board, we will be securing that to our framing through the face with these Cortex hidden fasteners. They come with plugs, so we can go back and plug all the holes and they'll blend right in with the deck. Next, we have these Trex hidden fasteners, which will be used to secure all the grooved boards. These hidden fasteners sit in the grooved boards like this. This pack also comes with start clips, which will secure the first grooved board next to the border piece. I designed the decking layout in the Trex Deck Designer tool. It'll tell you what size decking to order, how much decking to order, and even include which type of fasteners to use, which is very helpful. First things first, I need to install a little bit of blocking in order for the end of the deck boards to have something to screw into. Our border piece will overhang the deck here about 1 inch, and then the ends of the 16-foot deck boards will need to be secured to this blocking. If you plan on doing your own framing, check out my last video on how to frame a floating deck. Our joists are spaced 16 inches on center, which is what Trex recommends. We're starting with a 45-degree miter cut on each end of our left border piece. We had to notch out this board a little bit because it's too close to the garage wall. Our fascia board is about 1/2 inch thick, and we want the decking to overhang that an additional 1/2 inch, so we made sure to keep a 1 inch overhang with all the border pieces. We dry fit the first border piece and then cut the next border piece along the house. In order for the corners to meet up perfectly, we had to cut a tiny bit of this corner. These pieces fit perfectly, so now we're snapping a square chalk line to use as a guide. It's important for your first couple boards to be nice and square because it will affect the rest of your deck boards. We used a full 16-foot board for the width of the deck, and then we will need to cut down 2 16-foot boards to get the length of our deck, which is 24 feet 4.5 inches. We've got our chalk line as a guide. Now we're going to secure the board starting in the corner to make sure the joint stays nice and tight, and then we'll work our way down. We placed 2 hidden screws evenly on every joist. Some people will pre-drill holes for these type of screws, but the directions for these fasteners say no pre-drilling is required. If you have to secure the screws less than 1 inch from the edge, then I would recommend pre-drilling. I'm using a speed square to mark where the screws need to be placed. Now that our first 2 border pieces are secure, we can start on our first row of grooved boards. For this row, we'll need to use those starter clips because the hidden fastener doesn't have anything to tie into against the square edge boards. I used a little 3/16 inch scrap piece of decking to space the starter clips accurately. Once all the starter clips were secured, we placed our first groove board. On the house side of the deck where our border piece is secured, we made sure to keep that 3/16 spacing between the end of the deck board and the border piece. We found that using the tip of the speed square gave us perfect spacing. This first groove board we cut down to the exact length. All the other groove boards we're going to leave long, and I'll show you why later in the video. Now we can start using the hidden fasteners. We set the hidden fasteners in place, used a scrap piece to make sure the fastener was pushed all the way in, and then tighten the screw down about halfway. You don't want to tighten it all the way or else you won't be able to fit the next groove board in there, and you want to make sure to tighten it just enough to hold the board in place, or else it could create a gap that's too large. Make sure to square cut all your deck boards before installing them. You can do this quickly with a speed square and circle saw. After a groove board was set in place, we found it worked best for one person to screw the hidden fasteners down all the way, while the other person pressed the deck board tight into place. In some places, we used a rubber mallet to carefully pound the deck boards in place. If your deck board spacing isn't the same all the way through, make sure your hidden fasteners are secured properly. It took a while to get a system down, but once we did, we worked pretty fast. We were able to install all the deck boards in one day. We just had to come back and install the fascia boards and Cortex plugs. Before going any further, we needed to finish the border piece against the house. We measured the distance to the end of the deck and then added 1 inch, a 1/2 inch for the fascia board, and a 1/2 inch for the decking to overhang. Now we can install the rest of the interior deck boards. Unfortunately, at the end here, we had to rip the last piece down. It was pretty tricky to plan for a full end board because you have to account for every gap and they might not all be the same. So we took a measurement for this last board, making sure our border piece fits with a 1 inch overhang. We snapped a chalk line on the board where we needed to cut it. You could rip this board with a table saw, but Devin has a pretty steady hand, so we decided to just cut it with a circle saw. We were only able to secure one side of this board with hidden fasteners, so we used some of the Cortex hidden screws to secure the other side of the board every 16 inches. We made sure that the last deck board matched the same length as the first starter deck board. We cut and dry fit the end border piece, making sure it has a 1 inch overhang, and then before securing it down, we cut all the interior deck boards down to size. We snapped a chalk line to connect the first and last deck board. This will be used as a guide for the circle saw. We set the depth of the saw the same exact depth of the deck boards, and then made a straight cut all the way down the length of the deck. I used a blower to clear the sawdust off the line while Devin made the cut. Now that all the interior deck pieces are cut, we can finish securing the rest of the border pieces. Just like the other border pieces, we made sure to keep that 1-inch overhang and about a 3/16 inch gap from the end of the deck boards. We mitered the corners at 45 degrees and secured the pieces down with the Cortex hidden screws. The deck is looking amazing, but we still have a few more steps left. Next step is to install the fascia board. These are about a 1/2 inch thick, 7 1/4 inches wide, and 12 feet long. You can get them in different sizes depending on the size of your framing. We beveled the miter saw at 45 degrees and cut one end of the fascia board. This end will go at the corner of the deck. I marked out where the screws needed to go. We placed 2 screws evenly every 16 inches. We made sure the fascia board was pushed all the way up to the deck boards and then screwed the fascia into the deck framing. And last but not least, all of the holes from the screws needed to be filled with these little plugs. I couldn't find the plugs in our exact color decking, but these were pretty darn close. I used a hammer to tap the plug down. I tried using a rubber mallet and it didn't work very well, but if you use a hammer and lightly tap it, you won't do any damage to the deck. Once again, check out the plans for this floating deck linked in the description below. There you can check out all the tools, materials, and cost breakdown of the deck. We are so excited to have this deck finished. We are going to stage the deck soon. We've got some grass to plant, and there's a few small projects I want to do before I reveal the deck completely furnished. There's still so much work to be done in the backyard. I hope you subscribe to stay updated on the progress. Thank you guys for watching.